I wish I can talk about every Universal classic monster film. There was a lot famous and not as famous as some others, but it is what it is. There is just so much I can talk about, so little time. But maybe on in the remaining year I could talk about some more. Spoiler alert for next year. I will be laying down the hammer if you catch my drift on horror films. Well, the topic for today is going to be The Mummy, and we're talking about the Mummy franchise from 1999, and I guess up until now. I guess we can call this period from 1999 the Brendan Fraser's Mummy, and my appreciation for it too. Films that are sort of hard to hate on, only because it's stuff that we see in film are not in these type of films. I only know one person who said these films are dumb and don't like them. I'm not going to include a third film in this. But that person thinks Spider-Man in the MCU is the best interpretation of Spider-Man from the comics. But we're not talking about Spider-Man right now. That's for December, maybe. Like I said, these films are hard to hate on. They're fun, somewhat scary, depending on one's scare threshold. But these films were big. And I can say they brought interest back into the Universal Monsters. But before I can go into any further on this, run the intro, please. Longest time, Universal wanted to reboot the Mummy series to bring it to modern times. This idea actually happened in the 1980s. At the time, the last Mummy film for Universal came around 1955 with Abbott and Costello Meets the Mummy, which is more a comedy, not actual horror led film. Mummy came around 1944, The Mummy's Curse, which is an alright film for its time. You gotta think about the time that movie was released. But back to the 80s. During the 80s, the new Mummy film went into development hell with George A. Romano and Clive Barker attached to it at different times. Ideals range from wanting an unstoppable killing machine, sort of like the Terminator, you want to catch that Terminator high, or a film similar to a zombie film. And we can tell whose ideal that was. For much of the early 90s, nothing happened, just development to hell. Up until 1997. A script was greenlighted and casting was called. Did you know Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Brad Pitt, and Tom Cruise were in a small pool for actors for the role of Rick O'Connell? Well, none of that happened. Well, okay, I take that back. Tom Cruise will get his time in the franchise later on, but we'll talk about that later. Out of all those A-listers, Universal picks Brendan Fraser as the lead, which was a smart move. In fact, I couldn't imagine Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, or even Brad Pitt in that role now. We ain't gonna talk about Tom Cruise now. The director of the film will be Stephen Sommers, who would be go on to film the sequel, The Mummy Returns, in 2004's Van Helsing. Sommers did not want to remake the 1932 classic, The Mummy. He wanted a swashbuckling adventure meets comedy meets romance meets horror, all into one. Universal was skeptical, but they went with it. The studio needed a box office hit. They hadn't had one since 1997. The film that was a hit was a part of another franchise adored by millions that dealt with adventure meets horror in the form of dinosaurs. Nonetheless, The Mummy was released on May 7, 1999, winning big at the box office, even with another big franchise releasing a film for the first time in 20-something years a week before that. A franchise I no longer like talking about on this channel. The movie will receive mixed reviews. The screen testing didn't go as planned, but who cares what the critics say around? But I lied earlier. There was some that didn't like this film, calling the plot overstuffed and just crazy. But enough of the history of this film and the franchise. Let's get into this film already. Well, the plot to this film starts off with a high priest named Imhotep, played by Arnold Vosloo, having relations with Pharaoh Seti's mistress, Anaxamun. Well, the Pharaoh finds out about it, and he's taken off the earth by the lovers. Well, Anaxamun kills herself, thinking Imhotep can bring her back to life. Well, that plan fails. Imhotep is arrested by the Pharaoh's bodyguard, the Magi, for trying to commit the ritual, and Imhotep is sentenced to a fate worse than death. Buried alive with flesh-eating beetles. Scrap beetles, whatever you want to call them. The Magi will protect the tomb of Imhotep to prevent his return. In love, his lover is dead. His ritual is dead. Buried alive with fresh-eaten bugs for thousands of years in a tomb will lead anyone to wanting to take over the world once released to the world of the living once again. We're talking about Imhotep. Moving to the 1920s, we were introduced to a very beautiful woman named Evie, a lover of books in Egypt. Yes, Daniel Craig called your wife beautiful. So what? Along with her bubbling wannabe rich brother Jonathan, who wanted to find the lost city of Homacha. I don't think that's how you pronounce it. Homacha! Wadata! Sorry for pronunciation. After Jonathan stole the map from our main character and hero, Rick O'Connell. Well, Rick actually fell upon the land earlier in the film. Well, brother and sister find Rick in a jail in Egypt. They make a deal to find this lost land. The trio encounters a band of American treasure hunters, as well as Rick's old acquaintance, friend, the idiot Benny, and the Magi led by Ardeth Bay, who tells him to go back to where you can. Get the f out of here. Okay, that's enough. Ad-libs. Do they listen? Absolutely not. Well, they find Homacha. I'm gonna stop. I'm bad with pronunciation. They go inside the tomb, discover mummies, and find the Book of the Dead. There is a warning not to read the book, but does Evie listen? Absolutely not. What do we get next?
No! You must not read from the book!
Well, Imhotep is alive again, but he's nothing but rotten flesh and bones. But Imhotep has a plan. Plus, he has the hots for Evie. In order for Imhotep to become whole again, he must suck the flesh off the bones of his victims, which I thought was cool. Not scary, but I thought was cool. And the CGI by ILM was brilliant, especially for late 90s films and also by early 2000s. CGI was even better and better. Well, now there's a horny, love-stricken, homicidal dead person on the loose. Rick and his other rush to protect Evie, as well as trying to find a way to put Imhotep back in his grave. Well, the mummy proves to be tougher than thought. By the time he's whole, he can control people like here. Imhotep, you get the point. And also, he can create sandstorms, control mummies with a few spells, have super strength, drain the life out of people, and a healing factor, yada yada yada. You get the point. Imhotep nearly kills all the American treasures, and even Eve's supervisor, leaving Rick, Jonathan, and Ardeth Bay left. Well, there is Benny, but he sided with evil, meaning Imhotep, to become his sidekick, basically. Which is a common thing in horror films, especially these monster films. Imhotep's next move is to bring his lover back to life, again via the book of Amun-Ra. I think I said that right, using Evie as a sacrifice. But that's stopped by the heroic trio. After a fight with Imhotep and his mummies, Evie uses the book of Amun-Ra to put the mummified, but now walking dead, Anaxamun back to the afterlife. Imhotep is now mortal. He's pissed. But does he win today? Absolutely not. He's stabbed by Rick, and the mummy vows revenge before dying. Meanwhile, Benny becomes dinner for the scrap beetles. Anyways, back outside, Ardeth Bay thanks Rick for stopping the villain, and Rick gets the girl in the movie. Now, for the first film, it's a favorite of mine, of course. It's a film that doesn't get old. The film has a perfect blend of horror, adventure, and some jokes. The film doesn't take itself seriously at all, which is a right point in this whole entire film. I think when films take themselves seriously and don't come up as serious, that's when they fail. And the acting is on point. The runtime is not bad either. It doesn't get bogged down by too much dialogue and way too many details like some films do today. Which is why I don't get the hate for this film, even in hindsight. But people can have the right to their own opinions as they want, as long as you actually watch the film and try to actually analyze the film and do reviews on the film, not just saying it because somebody else said it. Now, I ain't saying this film is the best, but it's pretty fun, which is why this film is loved. Is that the point of movies these days? Oh, just the point of movies? Some movies? To be fun? Not preaching? Not agenda filled like movies of today? This film does have a sequel, and it was the acting debut of one Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And we call this film The Mummy Returns, released in May of 2001. So yeah, 20-year anniversary. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I'm doing this film. Better yet, this video. So it's a celebration. Well, most of the surviving cast in the first one returns with some newbies, including The Rock, who plays another antagonist in this film called the Scorpion King. Speaking of the Scorpion King, the film starts off with the story of said character who seeks to rule the world but is defeated, making a deal with the Egyptian god Anubis, his soul for the army of jackal-like warriors, as well as the oasis in the gold pyramid. The Scorpion King does the deed, but Anubis takes the Scorpion King's soul and army. It's weird how we got to this point with the Scorpion King, but enough of that. We're going to talk about that later. Like the first film, we move to current times. Well, 1933. Rick and Evie are now married and they have a son named Alex. Well, the happy family explores some ancient ruins, encounter thieves, and find a bracelet of Anubis and nearly drown to death. Well, mainly the parents. Back to London they go. The family is rich, which is never really explained, but maybe because of their digs and the treasures they maybe found. That's what I'm guessing. Plus, they live in Wayne Manor with Bruce Wayne. Nah, they don't live in the Wayne Manor as Bruce Wayne. That's a joke. But the mansion used in this film is the same mansion used for Wayne Manor in Batman Begins. Anyways, Alex has the bracelet of Anubis stuck in this race, and a new bad guy is led by Baltus Hath. I never can pronounce that name. With his enforcer Locknaw and kidnapping Evie, and also we have Ardeth Bay back too. Well, Rick, Ardeth Bay, and Jonathan and Alex seek to save Evie at the local museum. Well, early in the film, this Hives, I'm just gonna call this guy Man in Red Robes. Another new character, Mila, I think that's how you pronounce it, the present day incarnation of Imhotep's lover, Anaxamun, find Imhotep in Egypt, where they left off at, and seek to bring him back to life. Well, they do that once again, and Imhotep is really angry, like really angry. The villain's goal this time? Defeat the Scorpion King and to use his army to take over the world. The old, let's say this right, the old take over the world ploy, as Jonathan calls it. Well, it is. Well, the trio saves Evie, but Alex is taken by the bad guys because of the bracelet that can lead the men in red, because all of them were in red, the men in red, the coat-like, to find the Scorpion King's lair. Well, along this adventure, Imhotep brings his dead girlfriend's soul from the dead and finds a new body in Mila's, making her Anaxamun totally. With bringing back Anaxamun using the Book of the Dead, this unlocks the memories of Princess Nefertiti, which is Evie in the past, who was the protector of that bracelet of Anubis, and Seti's daughter, who was disliked by Anaxamun. Drama. Now, on the tail of the two villains, it's not two, it's multiple villains. Via Alex leaving clues, Imhotep, of course, is now whole again. Forgot to mention that. He has a new power. Well, kinda is not a new power, but like the Sam story he created in the previous film, this time he can create a giant wall of water to knock the heroes off course. Well, that slows him down, but the villains have problems of their own. Mummies, small mummies called pygmy mummies, who copied the attack positions of velociraptors from Jurassic Park Lost World. Same studio, but you get it. These mummies now mow down the man in the red robes. Lochnar is killed by Ardeth Bay in a duel. These two actually have a rivalship in this film, with Ardeth Bay, of course, winning, like I just said. Now, Rick has to save his son before the bracelet can kill Alex by dawn, as said by Imhotep. Well, Rick does just that. He saves Alex, but loses Evie, who is killed by Anaxamoon on some sneak stuff. Well, Imhotep and Anaxamoon find the Rock's lair, aka Scorpion King, but the mummy loses his powers once he's inside and must face the Rock without his powers. Rick is on the prowl, looking for revenge. Meanwhile, the leader of the Red Coats, or the leader of the Red Men in Red, whatever you want to call him, takes the bracelet, put it on his own wrist, but loses his own hand, sticking it in a hole. Pause. Meanwhile, Jonathan and Alex seek to revive Evie inside. Rick and Imhotep duel, but they get a special guest to fight in the form of the Scorpion King, and the CGI on the Rock is terrible. At this point, this is probably one of the worst CGI I've ever seen in my life, especially in a big budget movie. This is terrible. Who decided to okay this CGI, especially for a Universal film? Universal usually leads the way when it comes to like makeup and design and all that stuff, and they come out with this. Moving on, we can ignore that with that PlayStation 1 graphics. The Rock kills the leader of the man in red robes, tries to kill Imhotep, but like a villain, like Imhotep is, Imhotep says he's the servant of the Scorpion King. The Rock spares him, but the Rock goes after Rick after Imhotep lies on Rick, saying that Rick is seeking to defeat the king himself. Well, now Rick has to avoid getting killed by the Rock, which is now some scorpion man thing, and Evie is revived by the Book of the Dead. A fight between Evie and Anaxamoon happens. Oh yeah, there is a battle somewhere with the Magi, led by Ardeth Bay versus the Scorpion King's army of jackal men, or dog men, whatever you want to call them. Earlier in this film, Jonathan steals the scepter that can kill the Rock. The spear is used to kill the Rock. The pyramid crumbles. Imhotep is defeated, falls into the underworld, left by his lover, but his lover faces a worse death than him, eaten by a river of scrap beetles. The army is defeated. Everybody lives happily ever after. Now, I saw the sequel actually before I saw the original film. I got intrigued watching The Mummy Returns at some furniture store back in Wisconsin on a plasma TV. I was watching the final fighting scene on a loop. That was actually the first time I was introduced to Universal Monsters 2. While sitting in a furniture store in the suburbs of Milwaukee. That's how it happened. Now, do I think the first one is a little bit better than this one? Yeah, I think it is a little bit better. This one can seem kind of convoluted at some points, especially with the plot with the Scorpion King, or trying to kill the Scorpion King. But like the first one, this one is fun at heart. We know sequels have a hard time capturing the essence of the previous film. There's only a few films that actually can do that, like Terminator 2. But this, The Mummy Returns, is pretty much the first one, just adding a few new characters and The Rock. It still captures the horror and adventure of the first one. The characters from the previous film still have the same characterization from the first one. Rick is still a swashbuckling hero from the first one. Evie still loves Egypt, and books, and exploring. Jonathan still loves his riches, or trying to be rich. Ardeth Bay is still a protector for all things Egypt and all things mummies coming back to life. Imhotep still wants his girl in the world. Stakes are higher for Rick and Evie because now they have a son, but a badass one, a smart ass son I should say, that is smart and doesn't take anything from anyone, even standing up to Imhotep to a point before he sees his ugly ass face. The addition of The Rock is alright, just not that CGI. They need to do something. I hope there's a new Blu-ray. There should be a new Blu-ray version come out. It's 20 years. They should redo that. But anyways, the CGI can go to the shadow run for that. The addition of Anaxamoon gives a little bit more to Imhotep. Just a little bit. But the addition of Evie having memories of being Nefertiti can seem overloaded, but for me it's fine. Adds to her story a little bit. And it also gave us two fine women fighting twice in this film. Sorry, Daniel Craig. Should have made a better James Bond. Not being disrespectful to your wife. Anyways. But I think after this film, the whole reviving evil mummy thing can get old. And after this film, we get to see the backstory of The Rock's character, which was named Matthias in the 2002 spinoff, The Scorpion King. He was once a good guy, and he must have became corrupt later on. But that's a video for a different video for, I don't know, a different time. Plus, I haven't seen any of those Scorpion King sequels that Universal keeps putting out every 2 years for the last 20 years. So, they'll probably get the mystery of how The Rock's character in The Mummy became, or I should say the Scorpion King became what he was in Mummy Returns. With The Mummy, The Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, which could have been good. This movie, of course, takes place in China. Jet Li is the new mummy. Rick and Evie are older. Evie looks different. Alex is a man now, and Jonathan is a nightclub owner in China. There are references to Emotep in this film. I think Jonathan's club is named Emotep. Jet Li's mummy, Han, could rival Emotep in power. This man can change into a dragon and some sort of wolf thing, can control elements too. You know, Emotep does have telekinesis and control water, and basically the same thing as Han. He just can't turn into a dragon or wolf thing. In this case, for EJ, he probably couldn't turn into a jackal or something. Anyways, the movie sunk badly. There was an abominable small man playing football with the bad guys' bodies. I ain't saying it's the worst. Okay, maybe it is. It is the worst movie film out of all these three. But we're gonna get to that later. There was supposed to be a fourth film after this one, but did that happen? Absolutely not. Thanks to the failure of The Mummies, The Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, we didn't get anything for 9 years, with rumors of a reboot. Only thing we had to do when it comes to The Mummy is watch, I guess, if you like all three films, watch all three films over and over again, and watch the first two. And then there was Revenge of the Mummy, only at Universal theme parks in Florida, Hollywood, and Singapore. That was the only thing that came out for The Mummy. But anyways, I ain't gonna get into that. But yes, we had rumors of a reboot on the way. We get the reboot, alright. We get 2017's The Mummy starring Tom Cruise. Remember, he was up for being for the role of Rick O'Connell back in the 90s. Well, he gets his chance, but he's not Rick. I forgot his name in this movie. I don't really care. Alright. Gloves are off. I said I was going to do this, and I was going to do a separate video, but what the heck, why not now? The Mummy 2017, I still don't really know what was going on. Like, I know what was going on, but I don't know what was going on. We're gonna go for the MCU style universe. Well, you failed, bucko. Big time. Let me start up with this. The film, instead of going back to the 20s or 30s, and even, well, they kind of do go back to the times of ancient Egypt. But this film starts off in the modern day. That's all right. But this film kind of starts off with the 1999 version. Finding things in the desert when he ain't supposed to be finding them. A mummy this time. A female mummy. Very nice female mummy. As far as you get it. This female mummy, she was mummified for doing a terrible deed, attempting to summon the evil Egyptian god Set. And I cannot pronounce her name. I'm not even going to try to pronounce her name. I'm just going to call her the female mummy. Well, now the mummy is alive, brought to London, but there's a plane crash which somehow Tom Cruise survives. Well, he only survives because the female mummy plans on using him for a vessel for Set. Meanwhile, the mummy does things sort of like Imhotep, sucking people dry but turns them into zombies. But I don't think she was ever fully revived to her state when she was alive, like Imhotep was. I think she got stopped short. Well, this is where the film gets stupid if it wasn't stupid already. This is where Russell Crowe's character is not needed. His character, Henry Jekyll, serves as some kind of Nick Fury-like character, and during his first meeting with Tom Cruise's character, he turns into Mr. Hyde, which kind of breaks up the main story, and it kind of gets comical, because I actually saw this film with my mama on Mother's Day, and we were both cracking up laughing, because we don't know why Russell Crowe was so funny in this film. I think because that suit was too small for him, but I don't know. So yeah, it breaks up the main story with the actual villain, who's now locked up. Well, Mr. Hyde turns back into Jekyll and goes back into the mummy tearing up stuff. We get member berries with the lady mummy creating a big sandstorm, sort of like Imhotep did in his first film. The ending is confusing, so I guess Tom Cruise is infused with Set, but the lady mummy goes back to the underworld. Just a whole bunch of garbage towards the end. If they was gonna make this film was not needed in any way, especially the way it was made. They tried to do something new, but failed while doing something old. Much of the plot is overloaded with unnecessary things like Hyde. They wanted Hyde, Russell Crowe's character, to be Nick Fury so badly, and I guess Tom Cruise was got to be like the Iron Man, which he was supposed to be Iron Man supposedly back in the 90s, but we ain't gonna talk about that. But they wanted him to be like the Iron Man or Superman character. I already said those two because those are the first characters in the MCU and DCEU. Universal, looking down the hill at Warner Brothers, looking across the hill, looking at Disney. They really, yes, all three studios in the same area in Hollywood. But anyways, Universal really wanted to catch that cinematic shared universe high. It reminds me of what the James Bond series did in the late 70s, trying to get that Star Wars high with Moonraker. And if you've seen Moonraker, you know what I mean. The film, meaning Mummy 2017, was too sloppy. I think Universal realized this too with the box office and reception, and the dark universe, as they call it, the universe that never was canceled faster than someone with different thought from Twitter bums or somebody who used to coach the Raiders. You get it. Now, who was responsible for writing this crap? The writing, the directing, and it was produced by Alex Kurtzman, or whatever his name is. Alex Kurtzman, every time he's attached to something, it's going to be bad. You know? Ask Star Trek fans about how the state of Star Trek is right now. Ask them. They got some kind words to say about Kurtzman. So now, as it stands, the Mummy films in the late 90s and early 2000s are still the best. Well, action-wise. Some might say the Hammer productions can be even better than these. Or even the original 1932, which can be better. 1932 original Mummy is not that bad. It's just not with all the sucking of the flesh and Mummy trying to take over the world and has telekinesis. He just wanted his woman, depending on what movie you're watching. I love these two films. Mummy, The Mummy Returns. Not so much The Dragon Emperor, but I rather watch The Dragon Emperor than watch that 2017 garbage any day. And I think due to the Mummy series, it's probably why learning about ancient Egypt became such, I want to say such a big influence. Probably why I love learning about ancient Egypt, mainly because of these two movies. Well, these two movies, The Mummy and The Mummy Returns, did give birth to one of the best indoor roller coasters on Earth, but that's a different story for a different time. But as it stands, these two films are fun, but not much needed. So go watch them for your Halloween experience. And this concludes my giant ass review. About to hit the 30 mark. Maybe. Bye.